Hey everybody, it's Rob, Frontline Mindset with National Fire Radio. I am back in the studio here today. I have a special guest, a lifelong friend of mine. I met him in 2020 when the world was going crazy. He opened up an oasis in the middle of Missouri so everybody could be gain a little sanity and be firefighters, which is awesome. I have with me today David Woodward. Dave, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate you being here today.
I'm happy to be here, Rob. It's always good to see you. I'm excited to have a little time with you today. We don't
Yeah.
get to see each other much, so at least we can, make these excuses to see each other.
No, this is phenomenal. Like I said, I'm excited. So let's jump into this. One Warrior
Sure.
LLC. You started this business to do a conference. We're gonna jump into that a little bit, but you told me about the mindset, and uh, it was her Hercules. I've always mispronounced it, but the Greek philosopher had his quote on, um, and I thought I had it here with me,
Okay.
uh, but he had his quote on what it takes to be the one warrior. And let's see here, I got it. There it was the whoa, it just popped up. Out of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't
Yes.
even be there. 80 are just targets. 9 are the real fighters, and we are lucky to have them, for they make the battle. Ah, but the one is a warrior, and he will bring the others back. So that quote has been central to your mission. What does the concept of the one warrior mean to you, and how do you embody that in your personal and professional life?
So, man, it's a lot to unpack in a brain that doesn't always stay on track. So, follow me here if you can.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a huge believer in personal responsibility. We take responsibility for what we've told the public we're going to do. There are a lot of fire departments out there, a lot of ambulance services out there. I'll bring them in because I'm sure that'll get talked about today. All kinds of public and private sectors out there that have bodies filling positions, but the leadership escapes them. And if we can influence one person at each organization or at more organizations than we were, if we can move progress downfield, one person can do a lot more good than they think they can. And one person putting in reps, one person with a positive attitude. I've recently experienced that with a new position at a new organization after several years at another one. What the influence of one person can do to bring the others back. So as we started our conference and we started trying to influence the fire service more in the Midwest, and what actually ended up being, I it's a stretch to say global, but when a guy from Sweden follows me and talks about what he's doing at his department, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But the idea was there's a lot of people that were like me that we just didn't really know what to do, but we knew what we were doing wasn't right and it wasn't enough and it just wasn't good enough for the people we said we were going to serve. So if we can influence that person, if we can arm them with the tools to be successful, and if we can teach them a mental mindset that, hey, you're not going to win everybody, but you can make an awful lot of progress from right where you're at. And that's been very, very helpful for me throughout my darn near 30 years now. And so we just my wife heavily engaged with me on this, and we were like, okay, what does this look like? How do we even do this? How do we do something that's effective for the time we have with these folks? Whether it's a one warrior class, whether it's the conference, and we bring a bunch of like-minded people together for a different kind of mission. And that mission was to empower and value these people that didn't feel valued at their organization. So that's kind of where it's came from, where it's going. My wife Elizabeth has been my absolute anchor on this whole thing. She does a really good job of grounding me back to, nope, we got to get this done. Like the devil's in the details, David, and I need you to take care of these things. or this whole idea falls apart, because the bigger it gets, the more complex it is and the more moving parts there is. So she's been incredible at offering great faith-based insight on some of it to help me stay morally grounded on it, to help me uh, see the vision that's kind of wandering around up in here. And just, I'd give her so much credit for this, and she doesn't get enough. So that's my babble.
Yeah. In your experiences, what traits set apart the one warrior from the others? Like how can these traits be developed in the fire service when we're talking about the one warrior?
So I how do I do this without telling a bunch of stories, Rob? But I got a phone call from an old friend of mine, 25 years. We've been friends. He was one of my brand new kids whenever he got into the fire service, and we were talking about value, and he didn't feel valued by his organization, and his guys felt valued by him but didn't feel valued by the organization. And ultimately that leads to turnover, because when you don't feel valued, you don't want to be a part of that something, right? A marriage doesn't work out without people feeling valued. Kids don't work out well with you if you don't value them. Everything down to the dog. If you don't value them, they don't understand. So valuing integrity. I stood by my morals throughout my lifetime, and my integrity has always tried to stand. So we do the right thing when no one's looking, and that's the first cornerstone of the whole thing. So regardless of what other people are doing, I can control what I do, how I do things. And if you want to hang out with me and be better than you were yesterday, then cool, let's do this, because I want to use you to help me be better. I'm going to find something from you to be better, and we're going to do these things together. So it kind of drives into that teamwork thing of, hey, I got your back. I think back to several years ago. I've always been a good pump operator. I've been blessed to, become good friends with Andy Sacadato and the Water Thieves guys. And one of the things I could do was pump a truck well. But what I couldn't do is tie knots and do technical rescue stuff. And so you take somebody that knows ropes well that wants to learn pumps. You got somebody that knows pumps well and doesn't know ropes. You both are in it for the same reasons, the same mission, the same values. That creates a synergistic effect on everybody else around you. So, so definitely, some values there, some integrity, some teamwork concept. That comes with some challenges sometimes, because you have to be willing to go, hey, I don't know how to do something. And the fire service is king of pride sometimes, and we don't always like to admit when we're struggling with something. So being able to be comfortable in your skin and go, hey man, I need some work in the weight room. I need some work on my cardio, or I need some work on pumps. I don't know why I'm stretching bad at every fire. We stretch out here in the parking lot. Why am I stretching bad at the fire? And when you've got that opened up team mindset where you're all willing to share your vulnerabilities and your strengths and everything, that takes that one person into two people, and those other guys, those true warriors that are with you, then that's that core group of people, and they all go out and they're all the one that brings the others back.
Right.
So it's a synergistic effect, if that makes sense.
It does. It does.
But you can't, in this world, if you stick your neck out, and I unfortunately, or fortunately, however I've been blessed here, I stuck my neck out. Mm-hmm. So you can't just walk away from that without compromising yourself. So when I say I've got to maintain my integrity, it's all the way through the mission now. Because everybody watches you.
Yeah.
So hopefully that explained that okay.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. Revolutionary Fire Tactics at the Lake. This is where I got the chance to meet you in person, talk to you on the phone first, via David Mellon from Valor Fire Training. what inspired you to start a fire conference, in the middle of Missouri,
Hmm.
and kind of kick this thing off?
Okay, so at my um, so I worked at Lake Ozark Fire for 18 years before I went on my new endeavor, and there was discussion of how to do some things better. We had recently created a new training officer position at Lake Ozark. Um, I had been selected to fill that position, and part of what I did was a kind of an assessment of not just our organization but the whole lake area. And I was like, okay, what are we doing really well, and what are we doing that we could do better on? And I didn't really go into what did we do bad. I just kind of what could we do better, because I didn't want to spin this as everybody stinks. We need to do better. It was
Right.
what can we do to polish an already because we already had a growing culture for positive change
Mm-hmm.
at the time. And so anyway, I wanted to bring a bunch of the guys down to Water on the Fire, and it was Kurt Isaacson's one of his early. It's either the first or the second, and I'm pretty sure it's the first Water on the Fire we wanted to go down because he had started, and this is a long story, Rob, but he wanted to do. He was pushing booster tank backup, and I obviously I think there's bumper stickers on that now. Like Kurt
Mm-hmm.
did a really good job of pushing a good tactical decision there, and um, we couldn't, without going into too many details, we couldn't really it wasn't feasible to send a bunch of people down.
Yep.
So the idea was I go down, I take all the notes and come back and tell everybody what to do different. And that doesn't work.
Right.
That doesn't work. It was cool. I was able to come back and share a lot of tidbits, but everybody still went, "Oh, it's Woodward talking about what somebody else is doing,
Mm-hmm.
that he doesn't know what it's like here. He doesn't, it's different here. It's
Right.
the 80 mindset was really strong in that change mechanism. So I was talking to my wife about it, and Beth goes, we've got winter fire school here. We've got summer fire school. MUFRTI has done a great job for decades on an established fire school for the state. But what could we do a little different? Not that they're doing bad, just what could we do right here at the lake? So then we started talking about, things I really liked at from attending other conferences. I'd been blessed to go to Wichita. I'd been blessed to go to FDIC, Water on the Fire. I'd been blessed to instruct at a couple conferences. And we just started putting together, like, what would it look like to come to the Lake of the Ozarks and do something
Yeah.
amazing right here, to where the 150 firefighters around the Lake of the Ozarks wouldn't have to go anywhere, and we could bring in current evidence-based practice right here to the lake, and we could influence that change right here, right now, without breaking everyone's budgets.
And
So,
Dave, what year did this take off, or does it
oh my
start?
gosh, you had to ask me that.
Was it 2017 or 2016 or 2018?
2016, I believe.
Okay. Sorry, sorry I
Yeah,
interrupted your flow.
2016, I'm pretty positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it started the first year, and I called Kurt Isaacson up, and I was like, Chief, what would this look like? And he said, Man, I'd be happy to come up. And he showed up, and I was nervous. And he sat there, and everybody was nervous looking at him because we were just a bunch of, rural Missouri firefighters. Kurt Isaacson's hanging out, and he comes in and just smashes that class. But what was really neat before it was I started getting phone calls from people. And I had reached out to Brian Brush to see if I could get some donated fire by trade stuff, for like raffles and all that. And he was like, I tell you what, do you need any instructors? And so that year we ended up, Justin Mann came and taught that first year. And it was Justin's first real outing as an instructor. So I got to help watch his career grow. Um, David Mellon had been doing some instructing, and David called me and he said, "Hey man, like I'd love to come hang out with you guys." And I was like, "Sure. I don't have any money. I have no plan. You know, everything's gonna be crazy." Uh, and then the O'Byrne guys, Chad Daly and the Kansas City guys said, "Hey, we'll come to a class. Let's Survive." The local emergency training specialists, Craig Bone and those guys out of Missouri, were like, "Hey, we'll do a Survive class." But everybody put their own spin on it. So it wasn't really
Right.
part of the grant class. It was their own spin. Like, hey, I've got this window of time. How am I most effective with this window of time? So, like, David Mellon brought it. Justin Mann brought it. Gordon Leftridge, he used to run a place called Fit for Duty, a firefighter PT physical fitness training thing. He came that first year and was like, "Hey, let's do workouts without any gym equipment. So you're just in the bay doing workouts. Here's what you can do, you know." So that first year was really cool. And then it left us really hungry. Like, okay, that was cool. What can we do next year? And what can we keep doing? But it all started with us just trying to like bring something to the lake for our firefighters here in the lake area. And it's been bigger than I ever thought it would be,
Yeah.
both internally and externally.
What? So when you were working on the vision of this, and you're talking to Beth, and you guys are, she's hammering you about the devil in the details and stuff. But like, what were like what was there a like what was the biggest challenge that you found yourself grappling with as you're moving this conference forward, as you're deciding you've made the commitment, you've pressed launch, and now you've got it, your mission control. Like what was one of, is there a biggest challenge that you can just point out that you were like, yep, nobody told
Um,
me about this one?
well, let's talk frontline mindset for a second. I let everybody tell me what to do.
Okay.
I let everybody and anybody influence me on how I need to do things, and I got scared and tucked tail fairly regularly the first few years. Now I'm kind of at a point where we're going to go do this thing and hang out. If you want to hang out with us, cool. Um, but I had a lot of people used to their normal influence and how things went, and we broke the mold in that world.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a few years to really own that this is our baby and that we're going to make these choices and we're going to do them based off of these integral things that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And so, really getting my vision, and she still asks me, we have had a 16-year conversation of what do you want to be when you grow up? And, she wanted to be a nurse, and here she is finishing nurse practitioner this spring. Um, I've always wanted to be a good paramedic and a good firefighter. That when you look back on my career, you go, "Hey, that guy was okay." You know,
Yeah.
that's all I want. Just that guy was okay.
Yeah.
He was okay. He did some stuff. But this conference, the thing I didn't really understand was people would hate me for no reason, and people would like me for no reason. And it really was hard for me as a guy that catches more flies with honey to learn to deal with some of these difficult conversations that would go on, because you'll say things to make things seem better at the time that will make down the road much worse. So that for me was the single biggest challenge in the conference. Attention to detail. We make lists, we go through, hey, we need to get this done, we need to get that done. We do a Google spreadsheet with the different players that are helping us with the logistical challenges, and we get it done. That's okay. I can order pins from whoever, not a
Mm-hmm.
big deal. The actual challenge of people that are there to make things difficult and you don't even understand why, and learning to deal with that was the single biggest challenge for me.
Okay. One of the things that, and so for full disclosure for everybody, I've been to the conference several times. so I've got to see this firsthand. But your conference fosters a deep sense of brotherhood and family.
Hmm.
How how did you create the environment where strangers leave as a united family? Because that's like I was making friends before, but like I truly developed serious friendships as a result of your conference to the point where you know, like I'm like, okay, I got the bail money and I'm on the flight, like that's like it's that level, right? How how
Yeah.
how how did you foster that? Like what was that? Because I don't
Um,
think like I can't imagine that you were like, hey, I'm gonna make this be like like were you envisioning such a strong bond or did it just happen organic? I mean, like, talk to me about that because it's
yeah.
one of the things about the conference that's amazing.
So, um, I like the word organic, so I'm writing it down. Um, I don't know that I truly saw the vision of what has came from that. Um, some of my best friends in the world now have came out of that conference. I think about my buddy Kevin McCart,
Mm-hmm.
and I've watched his career professionally and personally. Him and Tracy have done amazing things in the fire service now. And I think about that dude just called me and said, "Hey, is anybody giving Kurt a ride?" Never talked to him in my life. Hey, is anybody giving Kurt a ride from the airport? Oh man, I hadn't thought about that. Hey, I kind of know him. I'll pick him up. You know, when we started getting together, I think part of it is before that conference, I was just some guy, right? And then we started building this conference, and that first year, people were like, "How did you do this? Who get?" I had the question asked, "How did you get permission to do this?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Permission from who? Like, who gives permission to have a conference, right?" And it came down to some interstate or intrastate, outside of state issues where that particular guy had traveled all the way up from Louisiana to come hear Isaacson. And I was like, wait a minute, you drove your car? Oh no, we flew. We flew to, and we flew up to attend the conference to come see Kurt because they wanted to see him. And that was the dates worked and everything. And I'm like, how did you do it? Well, we wanted to be here. Everybody that came to that conference wanted to be there. They weren't there because their department was like, "Hey, we're sending 4 people to the regional school. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
needs to go. We've been doing this for 100 years." Every single person, and I started realizing people were paying out of their own pocket because a lot of the departments were going, "Hey, we're not paying for that. We don't even know who that guy is.
Right.
We don't know who that guy is. We don't know how legit that is. Who starts a conference that's not state run or college ran or whatever.
Or a big
um
industry leader.
yeah, this is going to be a joke. This is going to be an absolute joke. So organically would definitely be a good way for me to realize that there were a whole, and I looked around that whole conference, that whole first weekend of that first year at the Lodge of Four Seasons, and was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Like, I felt alone and isolated. I had lots of friends, but I was still felt alone, like I'm the only one that thinks like this. And then I realized,
Mm-hmm.
no, I just may be the only one that thinks like this here. This guy at this department feels the same way, and this guy at this place feels the same way. And it really became a situation where once they came here, everybody started realizing I can let my guard down a little bit. I can learn with these guys. I'll since the uniqueness of the resort feel, you didn't have to leave. So if you were going to partake in an alcoholic beverage or something with your friends or your new friends, you didn't have to worry about driving and getting a D-dub and you know
Yep.
organizational chaos when you got home. Um, and um, everybody could just take off their shield of armor from their thick skin And it really built an absolutely incredible organic push where people were starting. I'd see it on Facebook, and I'd see these people like, man, I've never felt so alive after coming to this conference. And I'm like, wow, like unintended consequence came out, or not a consequence, but unintended benefit came out of that. And then, so then we realized like that's what makes us special. You can bring in any of these instructors, but what makes us special is, you know, we're doing the things that value side of things is through the roof with our guys. Everybody gets to feel valued when they come here.
I think that's like I said, the value proposition, and I look at instructors of the past and how they've developed from the conference, because like when you said that, like you're like when you realize you're not alone, like I think of your original cadre of people and how for some of them this was their start.
Yeah.
They got to start here and they got their feet wet and they could learn, because I think that from a conference standpoint, that mindset is like you have to be vetted and everything else. And I think vetting's important because you want to make sure the people who are coming in to teach are qualified to do so, and there's a way to do that. But, prior to 2016, there were only a handful of ways to do it. And you provided a way to do this and get training out there. And it kind of leads me into this next question on some of the lessons learned, because I think this was it wasn't so much a lesson, but it was a learning curve for you. You've seen firsthand, and I know you and Beth have both talked to me about how training at the conference leads to lives being saved. And, that's not a stupid statement of like, yeah, no shit, we're at a conference and we're learning how to do our job better. But there have literally been people who have left the conference and within 24 hours have utilized the skills that they have learned, reported back to you, and been like, oh my God, we did VES and we got,
Yeah.
XYZ. We learned something from Steve Kimker from his extrication stuff, and we effected a rescue at an auto accident. You know, what's a memorable thing for you of someone who learned something and utilized it? Like, is there one that sticks out in your mind?
Ooh. As I think about this, I'm like really trying to narrow in, but I have had several of those. Um, we have had VES within hours of our conference. We have had extrication is probably our most widely the one I get the feedback on the most. Um, hey, we had this critical patient and I learned a tourniquet and I tourniqueted a leg while they were in the car and the medic was able to XYZ. Um, I had I've had a Kansas captain reach out and like, hey, right after class, we had a truck, the next morning I was on shift. We had a truck upside down in a ditch and we were able to effectively get that patient out and to the trauma center. And it was because of the techniques we learned. And I've had chief officers that have immediately contacted me after the chief officer development and been like, hey, we have completely um, reprioritized our budgets. And now training has a bigger chunk than tires. I'm trying to think of the VES one right now, and my brain is just not going there, Rob, and I'm sorry. It was not local, but I can't think of where it was.
That's okay. Um, it's I know that from just myself, like no, like and I think back to Chief Haig, and this is Craig Haig did his class, and while it wasn't life saving from the aspect of like like I went out and affected something. I remember it saved my life just on the fact of like I finally had that brief viewpoint of sanity, and then like watching the for me like watching the instructional methods of like Jonathan Brumley doing stuff with hose lines and being able to learn that and bring it back and being like, hey, try this, and watching like my own people get better at the job because I was bringing that knowledge back was
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal. So it's like I said, it's and I know I talked to somebody about the VES, I just can't
Yeah,
remember
I
it
can't think
myself.
of who it
So
is right now.
um, year after
If
year, you
somebody
call,
watches this and
yes.
you're the guy, like, I'm sorry. There's a lot going on up here right now, and I'm sorry, but let me know. Hey, dude, that was me, you jerk. Because I
So
can't talk about valuing people and then not
yeah,
remember who it was, but here I am.
so the role of hands-on training, what does that play in achieving the conference's mission?
All right, so hands-on training is like a burden and a curse at the Lake of the Ozarks, because um, we need to put our hands on things, right? Like that is firefighters. My wife says she didn't coin it, but it's not what you know; it's what you do with what you know, and that's one of my favorite things she ever said to me. And it's used in nursing a lot. You can know a whole lot about a sick patient, but if you don't know how to actually tactically, get that IV, run the pump, do the fluids, do the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with all of us that are dual role and living our lives as paramedics a lot of the day. Um, you can know why they're septic, but if you don't know what to do with that, they're still going to die, right? So, hands-on is a huge component to the revolution. So I vet those instructors very, very, very well. That's why some come back repeatedly, some do not. Not that any of them do bad, but we try to rotate, but we also try to keep some established, people that understand the vision of the conference. Todd Edwards is a good example
Mm-hmm.
of that. Todd and I work very well together professionally, which creates a very good product on the back end. Um, but when we do July, Missouri heat and humidity, people don't realize it if they're not from here. It's a lot worse than they think. I think probably you realized that in July, that first time you came, the humidity here is a bit high.
Mm-hmm.
It feels
It,
like it's
it's
going to rain, you know.
Yeah, it's
And I
like
think,
New York has this problem. When I grew up in the Catskills, it was the same way, except you guys were like the switch turned on at 8 o'clock in the morning.
yeah, yeah. So there's reason my concrete guys are pouring concrete at 3 in the morning in Missouri, So, um, but so how do you do hands-on training and practice like you play with all your gear, air packs, on air, with gloves on, all the things in mid-July heat? And what I found was people were okay with it. Like a lot of people went through and did it. It's a We tried to take measures, to cooling measures, pull the liners out of the gear, no live fire. But this last year was our first year of trying to fall hands-on training with the conference. The hot sites were 500% better this last fall
Mm-hmm.
because of the temperature change. It allowed people to focus on application of skills. Um, but with that comes its own problems of why would I go to the Lake of the Ozarks in the fall? Like I can't go swimming, we can't go boating, we can't. The kids are back in school. The wife's busy with the kids while I'm gone. There's
Yeah.
other challenges that come up there. But back to your question, like focus of hands on is so vital, because there are a lot of organizations out there. Guys will be on a department for years before they ever actually force a real door at a real house fire.
Mm-hmm.
There are engine companies running around this country, volunteer and career, with a guy on the irons today that's never forced a door in real life under real conditions.
Yeah.
So that snapshot in time that I get them for that weekend, they need reps from real people that have done it in real life, that are not going to be jerks to them and talk down to them, that are going to treat them with value, help them up, and then probably stay with them throughout their career. how many of these instructors do we know? The world of social media has absolutely broken the mold on the I'm an instructor up here and you're down here. That's gone. I've talked about it before. When I see my buddy Burke from Gerald, Missouri, wishing Jonathan Brumley a happy birthday on Facebook, it just cracks me up.
Mm-hmm.
Because a few years ago, that was not how we did things. So the hands-on aspect is extremely important. We are right now in the middle of discerning like the information to like what's best. Do we split this thing up and do a classroom in the summer and a hands-on in the fall? Do we try to do the whole thing in the fall? Do we just go back to summer? There's lots of things to look at there.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, what I care about is not my convenience. I care about the product that we're putting out for the students that come.
Yeah.
And the hands-on portion is not just hands-on skills and reps, but the application of those skills so that they take that back to them and go, hey, I've never been to this situation before, but at training, I learned to do this under this situation. And it's sort of similar. I'm going to apply it here. Connecting those dots is one of the things we do very, very well at our conference is connecting the dots between skills and application.
Yeah.
And for any fire service instructor one folks out there, if that's not their meat and potato of their goal, you are failing your students.
Hmm.
I'll get off my soapbox.
No, I think and I want to say too, like the hands-on training, like it at the end of the day it stops, but the advantage of the conference, and I think like we talked about it offline before, but like the start of the micro conference, you were definitely one of the revolutionaries, no pun intended, in doing this, right? Like
Almost like we chose that.
but yeah, like but you go from the hands-on training aspect to then and when you said like the instructors are not up here speaking down to here, the instructors and the students are at the same level. So at the end of the night, when you come back to the hotel, the end of the day, you come back to the hotel, you're having that beer. Like it's not uncommon to have Todd Edwards come up to you and be like, "Hey, you did a really good job today." Like
Yes.
I was very like you were in the beginning, you were a little sloppy, but you tightened right up. Like just remember this when you get back to your home department. Like always,
Right.
and Kevin McCart the same thing. Like I watch these instructors communicate with people in the pool at the bar or at the bar having an adult cocktail or beverage, and the training's still going on, and it's like that's because I think that to me is that synergistic part of it where we talked on it before. Like that's organic conversations happening, or they've come back from the hands-on portion of it, cooled down a little bit, and then they've thought about something else, but like we've created an environment where it's okay to go up to the instructor and say, "Hey, I got to thinking about this. Like, can I ask you how to?" And they're more than happy to be communicating and having that conversation. And I think that it like you can have a conference where you just talk, and that's I'm not saying there's no value in that because there is
Mm-hmm.
value to that as well.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
like but hands-on training, it like as Beth would say, it's not what you know, it's what you do with what you know. It kicks something off to where the brain's going to think differently, and I just think that is huge about the conference.
Absolutely. And that's where like this last year, so we've been very blessed to have some partners throughout this whole event. I would be it would be rude to not mention Sunrise Beach Fire
Mm-hmm.
that provided us their beautiful training facility for years. This last year we went a different route because we were able to bring live fire into play. And Kevin Hurtubise, the now retired chief of Rocky Mount, had told me since year one, I will host the revolution some year. And I was like, if you're familiar with that area, just jump on Google Earth in your leisure and check out Rocky Mount, Missouri. And I was like, okay, Kevin, nice. You're a nice guy, And he built a Connex village that is almost identical to the T boxes and such at FDTN. So Jim McCormick's been another one that's been a big supporter of us from the beginning. He's never made it out, but he's always supported us in other ways, via the publications or whatever. Kevin went out, spent like a week or two out there, learned how to do everything. Jim does a class, teaches people how to build the connexes and all that. And he built one for his guys with in the back of his mind going, I'm going to host the Revolution some year, and we're going to be their live fire spot. And sure enough, we kicked that thing off, and he retired the Monday after the Revolution this year. So we got it in.
That's awesome.
So those parts and pieces all coming together for us, those people, the relationships, that's what makes this conference. But for years at Sunrise Beach, we had a giant open concrete parking lot. I guess that's where I'm going with this story. And this year it's on rock and grass and dirt and pallets and uphill, downhill, next to the hill. They're stretching off the new Quad 58, crosslay device thing. Mm-hmm. And we've got all these mutual aid trucks from all over the state hanging out with us. And the application side of that was really cool to see. Okay, parking lot stretch is one thing, right?
Yep.
Stretching in this topography with this terrain, with your ankle rolling on this rock, all the things, or the truck being too close to the house or too far from the house. All these things, all these components come into that application side of your learning, and it creates a whole different firefighter than just parking lot stretches.
That's awesome. As the owner of One Warrior LLC and the organizer of the conference, how do you personally stay sharp and embody the warrior mindset? Like, how do you, on your day-to-day, keep that in your life?
Some days I don't. Yeah, some days I don't, Rob. Some days I struggle. Guys, I'm not sitting here at the top of my game. I'm 47 years old, and I'm very blessed with a lot of things in my life, but I'm not without my own struggles and poor choices and consequences of those and all the things, right? So I was just thinking last night, a couple different thoughts before this today. One of them is every day when I get out of bed, I have a choice as to what kind of man I am when I get up. Like every day, it's my choice. For those that know me or don't know me or know of me, I am a washed in the blood of Jesus Christian. And that is a new faith in the last 15 years. I went to church, but didn't know Jesus. And I got to know Jesus over the last 2 years. Specifically, he has moved mountains in my life. But every day I get a choice as to what kind of person I'm going to be today. Sometimes that choice fails, and I can't wait for sleep to start over the next day. I am the operations chief at the organization I work for now. And I was given a whole lot of people, 40 some odd people that didn't know me. And they were like, hey, here's this new guy. And all new relationships, friendly without necessarily being friends kind of deal, from that upper management position, So every day I work, or every conversation I have with those people, it's my choice to lead in the One Warrior mindset, or to fail and just be to them another one of those guys that floated through here. One of my favorite people at my current employer has been there for 35 years. 35. He's been there longer than most of my people have been alive. And he looked at me and was like, yeah, you got some good ideas, but you're just going to leave like everybody else. And I said, well, we'll see. We'll see. Um, he met me one night on a bad call. I jumped in the back of the truck. He said, if you're going to do something, do something. If you're not, get out. That's how he felt about me. And I said, well, I'm going to do something. I did something. Good things for her. Got to the hospital. She was a lot better. And he went, okay, kid's not so bad, right? But it took day in and day out self-discipline to not step on my step on my own throat and not destroy myself. I had to maintain my integrity, my values. I had to value those people. I have to do those things. I've got to do those values that One Warrior thinks of, right? I have to be passionate. I have to be courageous. I have to have honor. We do these things, but it's my choice every single day, whether I'm going to get out of bed and be a jerk off, excuse my language, or be the leader that I feel the Lord put on my heart to be. I can't control a lot of circumstances in my life. There's things outside of my control, right? But the things that are in my control, that's my choice when I get out of bed. So that's what I have to do daily, both leading my family, leading my work, leading the conference and the side gig stuff. Every conversation I have, they all have to be super vigilant. I'm going to fail though. Here and there, we're going to make mistakes. Here and there, we're going to mess up. What we do with those mistakes is going to be what defines us. How we overcome those, how we learn from those mistakes, that's going to be what's going to overcome us. If we stay blind and feel like we're just on top of the world, you'll be humbled because it's not going to work. It's not going to last. And we see it. We see fire service professionals all over the country because we're all transparent, right? You can go to my Facebook right now and there's my kids. That's crazy if you think about it, and it's all out there in the world. They're going to see your goods and your bads. Oh, what happened to that guy? So did I ramble okay on that?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I like the idea of when you wake up, you get like one embracing that you're going to make mistakes and everything else, but like you get to choose when you wake up and you get to choose how your day is going to be. And yeah, there are going to be factors that are outside of our control, but like it's up to the individual getting out of bed in the morning, doing that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and taking them steps. Like you set the tone. And I always think of that thing that's on, I want to put it on the apparatus base. We set the tone, like you set the tone for your own day. Like, so I think that's important, and
yeah, good. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna you go ahead because
well,
before I roll into the next question.
It's absolutely the thing we need to do, and the other thing to do too is in my mind, and not to go too much into anything, but this frontline mindset I think is an important thing that you're trying to do here. Sometimes life gets a lot harder than we ever planned it to be, right? Sometimes what feels like you've arrived actually is just the next step before there's a tremendous fall to go back up, right? So we don't just continuously climb. There's pitfalls throughout our whole life. I do believe strongly in seeking help in that situation. We're all trying to remove the stigma of mental health, and not to go into my life too much in this situation. I'm happy to visit with anybody that wants to talk about it. I just don't know that this is the avenue to do that right now. But I make no secret, mental health is for those folks, especially those folks that have tried to be resilient to all the things over the years. You may not have struggles because of an incident, right? But you might have struggles because of, administrative betrayal, different things that have happened, um, because you stepped yourself out there to do better. You will be attacked in many different directions by people that you never dreamed you'd be attacked by. And it may not be a full frontal attack where you see the arrows coming at you. It could just be abandonment, and they're just not there anymore. So as you navigate through life, it's okay to get people to have a group. I always tell people, I've always been blessed to have a big circle of friends, but I have very few people that are actually in my corner. So like when my father passed away last year, and then I had some different things happen in my life the exact same week that I lost the man that I respected more than anyone on the planet. It's incredible how many people weren't in my circle anymore. But it was more incredible how many people were in my corner when it was bad. And they were ready to fight for me and ready to fight, sort of fight me to get out of my own head, to realize that, hey, life's going to be okay. So drawing that help, not being afraid to ask for help. I'm really glad the fire service, and I'm seeing it in EMS now that I'm primarily in EMS, I'm seeing it starting to awaken there, that it's okay to start talking to each other about these things. So
I think it's so, and I'm happy to see this conversation happening about, because like trauma happens in different ways, mental trauma, like we can have the bad calls, and there's things that we may not be able to, like, we won't know until we get there, but like but I think even now, as in my new role, when administration abandons you, or you feel a sense of abandonment, whether it be by the chiefs who are above you, your boards, your city councils, whatever it is, to your lieutenant or your direct supervisor or the organization, that does, like, and I was so happy to hear like David Rhodes talk about it from in his speech one year at FDIC, and it kind of kicked off this conversation, because it is very real, and the
mhm.
fire service and emergency services doesn't think about it. But then I like look into trends in the workplace with like quiet quitting and how people just kind of blend out, and like it is so important for us to understand, and it's a mindset, because like I know from my own mental health struggles that I've had, like when in my career, I've had some of the most toxic leadership traits come out that have been strewn across me,
Mhm.
and like it deeply hurt me. Like it wasn't the cause. I mean, yeah, there were things that I will never forget in my career. There were moments that
Absolutely.
I,
Absolutely.
and I still think even all the bad things, it was a blessing from some higher power that I was able to be in that moment, because if anything, I've always understood that in those horrible moments, I was unconditionally loving somebody who I knew nothing about, right? So at least there was that for
Absolutely.
them.
I'm giving
But
you everything of me right
right.
now. You're getting
Yep.
all of me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And but then the when you're betrayed by administration, that 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 is a stiletto that cuts deep. And it like I said, it's something to be acknowledged, and we as a fire service and an emergency services like need to really take that in, because like you said, what you're doing now with the services you're working for, you know there is that mindset that comes out of, yeah, we'll see you, like, you talk about that guy who's been there for 35 years, and the expectation was already set that you're just passing through. And even if you are, like, if something comes up tomorrow, like it's not so much passing through as your mindset and that one warrior, like you are choosing to be the leader every day. So, but
Right.
going back to what we were kind of talking about, like I think that before I ramble into nothing there, yeah, like it's something that we need to be cognizant of. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that's just it. It's like, for me, I think back, I never want to be the guy that's accused that, you forgot where you came from kind of deal.
Yeah.
But at some point there is a switch that gets turned when you move, and you've seen it, I'm sure, in your
Hmm.
promotion. Truck officer and deputy chief, two very different things in how you play the ball or play the game. And I think it all comes back to when we stop valuing our people,
Hmm.
that's where it starts to fall apart. So my buddy that called me, that I've known for 25 years and was one of my first new firefighters as a young officer, um, and he says, I don't know how to even approach this above me, because every time I go in for a um, evaluation or whatever, I'm the bad guy. And I've been doing nothing but going to school and trying to do better, but I'm stuck in this
Yep.
loop of I go to school, I see something I want to learn, do better at work as a truck captain, and then I go learn something else and I see something else I want to do, and he's struggling with actually applying what he's learning because he's in an environment that's status quo. So he's getting dinged for going to training to be better, because by him going to training to be better, he's actually appears to be different than the rest of them now.
Right.
So it's creating this widened gap.
Hmm.
And the new chief was somebody selected because he's been there a long time,
Yep.
and it just creates this mess. And so when we talk about the conference and we talk about the One Warrior mindset and we talk about mental health and all these things, I think we just need to be hyper vigilant that we're not always going to, we've got to really maintain that locus of control and the things we can control and the things we can't control. Because if we start worrying too much about all the things out of our control, we're going to fall apart, man.
And that was going to be my next question is what advice would you give to somebody in the fire service who wants to embrace this one warrior mindset but feels stuck or overwhelmed? I think this is a good
Yeah.
segue into this.
Yeah. So, I mean, man, if I sit down, if I pulled this book out I've got over here that I'm writing notes on, it's overwhelming some days. And not to say my boss is a bad guy, right?
Hmm.
When I'm trying to make change in an organization, you got to think of it like a big ship, right? And I can't just turn the ship 90 degrees. You know, I'm not a battleship and I'm going full hard rudder here. We're a big slow ship, and I think that's one of the things to understand, especially if you're new coming into an organization. You need to learn what they're doing before you start making changes, right? And not just what they're doing, but how did they get here?
Hmm.
Like I had to think about with my organization, how did we get to where we're doing XYZ? Not so much
Mm.
why are we doing X, but how did we actually get here? And I think that comes back to the root, right? Why do I have this toxic situation going on here? Why do I have that? Um, why did that BLS provider on that fire truck do XYZ like that? Or on that ambulance do this? Um, I'm trying to think where I was going with that, Rob. But the we often don't look below the surface on these problems. And we really need to dig deep into how we got where we are. That's
Almost
what
like
I
an
had to do.
iceberg, you know.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
see the
We only
top is like
see that.
this,
Yeah.
but the,
And the old Titanic's going to hit what we can't see, not what we can see, unless it's a movie, right?
mhm.
So I think if I was a guy struggling or gal struggling, there's a lot of things to consider. And I do think it's okay to sit back and go, is this for me? Is this really for me? I think that's okay to do. For me, it was never a question. I think for Rob, it was never a question. This is for me. This is what I want. Um, but um, they need to understand, like, not everything's going to move quick. And there is a certain level of maturity that comes with this. and frontal lobe. I hate to say that, but reasoning and judgment and logic, all that frontal lobe stuff that you start to get in your mid-20s and up, is going to play a vital role in this. Because I can go out right now to a bunch of these kids that have brand new wet ink EMT license, and I can influence them heavy, right? I can have them mad like that barrel of monkeys game where you put all the monkeys together, right, and shake them up or whatever. Um, I can flat influence the kids in the fire service, right? Um, we have to be very careful with that. Because if they don't necessarily know how to figure out how to get to the root of the problem that they're mad about. They just know they're mad
Right.
about it. So if as I'm going through this, I think the biggest stuff to take away is value each other, right? On my level, let's say you're low level firefighter on the nozzle seat in the engine, right? Or you're
Mm-hmm.
the EMT on the ambulance, or you're whatever, right? I don't care. Maybe you work at the Quaker Window Factory full time and you're a Moro volunteer firefighter, right? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Do what you do it well. Learn how to do your things well. Learn how to do your job well. Learn how to do the job above you. And if there's a job below you, make sure you still know how to do the job below you, right? Understand that there's a time and a place for things, right? I there's absolutely a time and a place to question and ask questions and do things. Um, make sure you're valuing the people around you. Make sure that you're asking the questions if you don't understand. Um, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, right? Um, I can look back on my career. I don't lie, I don't cheat, and I don't steal. Put it on my tombstone. We're not doing those three things, right? I will never compromise that. So that's just the way it is. Um, the world can be burning down around me, and I'm not going to do those things. Um, but so if I was trying to embrace anything, be kind to each other, be kind to your partners, be a good brother or sister around each other. If anyone will agree, most drama in the fire service, and I keep saying EMS too because I watch it daily now. Most of our drama is back at the firehouse.
Right.
Very little of our drama is on a scene because we're paramilitary. At the end of the day, we follow orders and do our standard operating procedures, right? Um, back at the firehouse is where our drama is, right? So that's where I'm going. I don't know, Rob. I'm just kind of rambling there, but
No,
uh,
I think I've you've answered the question in that, like we've gone over, because it when it comes to this, I think that's the conversation is like, and I hate saying like just be nice, right? Because but
yeah,
like that's we have established as a service in this conversation today that poor management has a negative effect on people and
mm-hmm.
can do more damage PTSD wise and job stress wise than some of the worst stuff that
Yes,
we can see. At the
yes,
same time, it can also be our own people who are eating our own young in this environment. But then there's that person who's trying to come out of that, and you answered the question because it's like, hey, like, how do they overcome it? Well, they worry about themselves, and not in a selfish sense of like, oh, I'm going to think about me and me only, right? But like they focus on their job, they focus on what they're doing, and then they start looking towards what's above them, and they start looking towards what's below them. They do that, they're on track for success because they're controlling the one thing that they control, and that's themselves and their environment. And I think that's sound advice, and that's really right. Like the one warrior isn't just some brave idiot that goes out there and
yes,
is like, "Hey, let's charge the machine gun nest where we're going to do it. Let's." There's 100 people with swords. Why have one? No, they're smart. because they know their job, they know their skills, they apply them. That's why they're
Mm.
successful at being the one warrior.
Right.
And I think that's exactly what
That's
you've
right.
laid out here.
They're not a cowboy. They're not out doing rogue stuff. They're not
Hmm.
out, you know, bucking the system or the man or whatever. They're a tactician. They're intelligent. They're reserved when appropriate. They speak clearly with intent in what they're doing.
Yeah.
Anybody that knows me on a fire scene or a bad car accident or anything knows that my voice right now is my voice on a scene. I'm stuck with it. It's just this Midwestern non-dialect, whatever. So I can't change the tone and inflection, fellas. But I don't. I do not. I set that tone. It's important to set tone. It's important to understand, and it's important to make sure you're being polite and being kind in so much of our job. I work with a tremendous amount of volunteer fire departments. I think I have between law enforcement and fire departments, I think we have 14 agencies we work with throughout a day at my organization. So you think about 1,000 square mile service running 5,000 calls a year with 4 trucks, and our closest hospital's over an hour away. So time on task is rather long there, right?
Yeah.
Sick population, very sick, critical care type situation with a lot of moving parts. And our fire department assistance is first responder to BLS at best. Okay. So what's the best way to get the most effective use out of them in a situation? Don't be a dick.
Yeah.
But be nice, right? Be kind. Hey, it's okay to say please every once in a while, you know? But that will reflect on who you are,
Hmm.
and it will be a ripple through what the organization looks like. Man, there's some problems at that place, but did you see how they acted on that bad call yesterday? I see incredible change and growth in that organization. Have you
Yes.
seen the membership lately? They showed up and they were squared away. Their shirts were tucked in. They looked nice. Yeah, okay. I don't need everybody in button down shirts and badges and everything nice every day. But you know what? Show up and look nice. People make that patience. Even people at a house fire, right? You're standing out in the front yard, your house is on fire, you're losing everything you own, and the fire department shows up like an unmade bed. Boy, I wish it hadn't taken them 8 minutes to get that hose off the truck, you know?
Right.
Um, so everything comes back to, if I'm squared away at my job, I'm squared away at the job below me, and I'm squared away at the job above me. I can fill in a roll up or down as needed. That's that whole working out of class thing, right? The engineer learning to be an
Hmm.
officer, the firefighter learning to be an engineer, right?
Yeah.
EMTs that are good at setting up ET tubes and RSI medications or whatever, an
Yeah.
EMT that can run a mag drip and a pump. This thing's all interchangeable. It's the same stuff. It's the same stuff. One's just not on fire, right?
Right.
So being a good person is probably the centerpiece to this whole thing. We don't have to be jerks to each other, and we don't have to have this hardened shell where you can't talk to me and approach me. I'm so good. I'm so much better than you,
Yeah.
you know? So
Well,
that's my
I
ramble, and I'm sticking to it.
I think that's a good I think that's a good way for us to close this out, Dave. I mean, this is an insightful conversation, and I gained so much insight from it. I cannot thank you enough for
Absolutely.
being here on Frontline Mindset today and talking about the One Warrior mindset and how it kind of rolls into between the conference, the personal life, the professional growth. I mean, it's just been fantastic. So hang around for a minute here. I'm going to do our outro, but
Good.
everybody, thank you for joining us today with David Woodward, One Warrior Mindset. David, how can people get a hold of you?
Okay, so I'll throw my cell on here, 573-280-0161. Text me, call me. One Warrior LLC at gmail.com. You can email me. Um, I always joke around with my Missouri folks that I work for cheeseburgers. Like
Awesome. Good.
call me if you got a question, you know, call me. We'll visit. If I can help, great. If not, we are going to be going to Illinois, or I'm sorry, Iowa this spring to teach a couple classes. We're going to be out and about. Look for conference stuff coming soon at laketactics.com. So I'm in the EFO program right now, Rob. So
Yep.
As far as we could tell, I'm the only ambulance based member in the EFO program out of the 500 or so that applied. So kind of cool. So I'm out in Emmitsburg the 4th through the 11th coming up for the second class of the EFO. And so you won't see anything about the conference until after that, because that's my priority right now.
Yeah. It's a lot of work.
And I think people have got to understand that.
Yep.
Life is life. But call me, email me. I'm happy to talk. If you need resources or pointed in a good direction, I'll help you with that. If you just want to visit, I talk a lot, is probably evident in today's interview. So I want the best for everybody. I want everybody to have a Merry Christmas. Don't forget the reason for the season is Jesus. And, I'll see you guys soon.
All right, Dave. Thank you for everything today, everybody. This is Rob from Frontline Mindset, National Fire Radio. David Woodward, One Warrior LLC, Revolutionary Fire Tactics at the Lake, the longest named fire conference in the history of fire conferences, but it works. We will see you guys out there. Have a good one.
National Fire Radio.